Good evening, and welcome to RitterCast, the Ritter House Productions podcast. As most times, I am Vinny.
I'm Chris.
Hey, what's up? I'm Lee.
And we're bringing you a topic tonight that was selected randomly before the show. Here it is. Envelope, please.
Hey, what's in it?
What's the topic?
It's a nice thank you letter.
Huh?
The President Trump says he really appreciates our efforts.
Oh, wow.
Thank
what a
you.
nice guy.
Wow. Colts and you. Speaking of which,
Colts
is our
and
topic
you?
tonight.
And me.
And me.
And you.
Where's the end you come in?
I don't know. Do any of us have personal stories? I do.
I don't.
Ooh, I have a personal Colt story.
I have a brief story I can tell.
What?
Didn't happen to me personally.
So there is the end
I'll
you.
explain later.
There's the
Okay.
end you.
Yeah.
I don't have anything. I'm not interesting.
It's okay.
Fuck.
We can just talk about Colts that way.
Sure. Okay.
And I do want to say, full disclosure, they are randomized, but we know the topics that are.
Yeah, I
available.
didn't know where the end you came in.
So
I had no idea about that.
I do have a little bit of stuff written down for each one of the segments, just so we keep our dates straight and stuff.
Yeah,
so I do have a
sure.
little notebook that I may be looking into
Okay.
that the folks at home can see.
Sure,
clearly.
that's fine.
So just
Vin
wanted-
did his research.
I did a little research.
I kind of did.
We did a little research. I'm
Little.
just-
Oh, wait.
Little.
see, the problem is that I'm very
Not
bad
much.
with dates.
Not much.
Yeah,
So I needed to write
That's
some
fair.
things down for myself. But let me find.
So, I vote that Vin goes first this time.
Ooh, okay.
Sure. Well, I'm excited. I'm
Okay.
excited to hear
I want to
what
hear
you
Vin's
have to say.
personal
You
stories.
have
You're the one who has a
stories.
you.
Yes.
You
I-
has an end you story.
I do have an end you story.
I want to hear it.
I chose the religion that
Not a cult.
it's not a cult. It has
No
12
cult
it
is
has
ever a cult.
12 million members over 192 countries. They follow the Gohonzon, which is a Buddhist scroll. It has a lot of self-help teachings, a lot of Buddhist like mantras, things of that nature. It's very face value. Seems very, very fine.
The Gohonzon?
The Gohonzon is the scroll that they follow. The religion itself is called Soka Gakkai International, or SGI for short.
Okay.
Now, this
Sounds like a corporation.
it does. It does. It was founded in 1975 by Daisaku Akita.
Okay.
He was a Japanese businessman, and he took his idea that the basics, the foundation of this religion, again,
Yes.
I'm not saying cult for a very specific reason, from the 1930s. In the 1930s, there was the Soka Gakkai, which is like sort of translated to like values or something, values, culture, something like that. And it was just sort of a neighborhood self-help, like reaffirmation of just self. So it was
Right.
very Buddhist, but it was very grassroots in Japan. This guy in 1975 took it to a whole new level, brought it international, has said several times that this is a liberation. This is not like a religion. This is not a political movement. This is a liberation. Now, it's interesting that he said it's not a
What does that
political
mean?
movement. It's a liberation because in the mid-'90s, there was a huge hoopla in Japan
Yeah,
because a Soka Gakkai political party had international, not just the Soka Gakkai, but Soka Gakkai International had a political party spring up and actually got some power. I don't know exactly how much
Wow.
in Japan. And it had people kind of side-eyeing it because at this point there were already sort of talks of cult-like behavior. The New York Times actually in '99 wrote an interesting piece that explains its strange rise to power and said that everything about it is cult-like.
Right.
From the way that they recruit to the way that they isolate, and the more you isolate, the more you're risen up in the status of the religion. So people at that point in '95-ish were already still a little wary from the subway attacks in Tokyo.
Yes.
Which was from a
Right.
totally different, like
Yes.
at this point, unknown cult.
Yeah, that was a smaller like doomsday cult.
Right,
I know it was
exactly.
like a cult of personality. It was around that guy.
Yes, it was a cult of personality, which at this point, Soka Gakkai was considered a cult or a cult of personality just because of the creator.
Right.
So it rubbed people the wrong way. Now, this goes on still from '95 until now, And it is now, like I said, in
That's
100.
When it was founded in 95?
It was founded in 75, but from
right,
95,
okay.
when they got political power, until now, they have just exponentially spread. Again, the goal is to liberate, whatever that means. So a couple of the things that I read were of people who get into this. Again, it is very Zen in the sense that it is all about finding yourself.
Yeah.
But the way that you find yourself is through these scrolls, and the way that you find yourself through these scrolls is by talking to your leader, who talks to his leader, who talks to the big cheese somewhere else.
Right.
Now, what happens is if you start to feel that something is wrong, you are told it is because of the negative in your life, it is the outside in your life. You need to look inward, you need to look in towards the Gohanzan and get closer to this religion.
Right.
So as you start doubting the religion, they're pulling you more into it, saying that it is the outside that is poisoning you.
Ah, clever.
Right.
Interesting.
And of course, as you're getting more and more into it, they're requesting more and more money, more and more of your time, more and more of your physical being and your existence is pulled into this until you are part of it for good, and there's nothing else aside from this religion.
Right.
Which, if you know cults, that is the whole deal. Everything bad in your life is because of the outside world, and if only you believed a little harder, if only you gave a little bit more, if only you were more willing to recite the Gohanzan to yourself and to your family members and to other people to make them believe, then you would be a true, happy, centered individual.
Right.
Now, I chose this cult to talk about today because I have had an experience.
Go on.
An interesting experience, but an experience nonetheless. And it wasn't because I went and you know, went looking for
Did you become one with the
with the
Gohanzan?
Gohanzan. I did not. It became one with me, though.
Okay.
So I, for a long time,
Sure.
I live in an apartment, as
Right.
you guys know. The viewers may not. I hope they don't. And in this apartment, I had a neighbor. We will call her Sarah. Sarah was strange from the get-go. We moved in, and about 2 months after moving in, me and Lex, who is the individual I live with, as you may or may not know again, we're going to work, and we carpool. And I go to get in the car, and as I open the door, I hear from the window next to ours. So we're the upper level of this apartment. So I look up to our window. There's nobody there. I look over. I see somebody peeking through the blinds, whispering loudly enough that I can hear from the street, "I see you." Okay, a little bit weird, right? So I start getting in the car,
weird.
and I'm like, "Lex, just get in the car." And she goes, "Yeah, I know you see me seeing you motherfuckers." I was like, "Okay. All right, so where's this going?" She proceeds to call us vampires and werewolves. Now, to be fair, if you've ever seen Lex and myself, we do look like vampires and werewolves.
Yeah.
At least I
Well,
look like a werewolf.
Lex vampire.
Right,
Yeah,
me a
you're a
werewolf.
werewolf. Okay, I
She
can
also
see
said witch, which I get that too. We have all kinds of skulls and voodoo stuff and all that, crazy
I
stuff
can see
going on in
that.
our apartment. So I'm thinking she's just tweaked out, or she is not on the meds that she needs to be on, or something was off. So I just said, "Get in the car, let's go." I end up calling the main office of the apartment complex, and I said,
Right.
"Look, there's something not right here. I'm not saying this because I want you to go like kick her out or do anything. I'm just letting you know that she seems like she's having an issue. Maybe someone should go check on her." That's the last I hear of it. She moves out a year later, like just gone in the night sort of thing.
Right.
I come home the day after she leaves, and the maintenance men are in her apartment taking out all the pipes. She had stuffed uncooked rice in all of her pipes. I'm not quite sure why, but I feel like it all relates to what I'm about to say, which is a few days after that, a package arrives at our doorstep. Now, the way that it is set up is our door is separated by maybe 2 feet of brick from her door.
Right.
So they are right next to each other. There's a package smack dab in the middle. It's not made out to anybody.
Right.
Okay?
Unmarked package.
Unmarked package. Leave it there for a day. Leave it there for 2 days. Leave it there for 3 days. Eventually, like, maybe it's ours.
Right.
So I bring it in. Open it up. There is now rotting fruit. Some sort of cake that is wrapped up in slices, as you'd see in like an anime, like with the paper and the string.
Okay.
And there is a couple letters. And in these letters, it talks to Sarah directly. So one of them is from Sarah to whoever she was speaking to, and the other one like a return letter. And the other one was
Are they handwritten?
they're all handwritten on like loose leaf paper.
Okay.
And the one is saying, "Sarah, I am better because you are better. we are good because we are great or something, very mantra-y, and then it goes, I am strong because the Gohanzan is strong. You are strong because the ties to the Gohanzan are strong together. We are stronger because of the Gohanzan. It goes on and on and on, and it's saying things like, may the light of the Gohanzan shine upon you. May all of your doubts be cast away by the wisdom of the Gohanzan. So I'm thinking at this point, it was just red flag city for cult. It was exactly what I was saying before, but I had no clue what this was about. So I'm sitting there with goosebumps, surrounded by rotting fruit and this what I assume at this point is some sort of suicide cake, because it's basically saying the letter is saying, like, you know what you need to do.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wow.
It's saying you know what you need to do. You need to.
Jonestown going on
Yes.
here.
That's unsettling.
It is very unsettling, and it was very, very bizarre because this happened less than a week after she moved out. So I feel like she moved out for a reason. Maybe she was trying to escape
The Gohanzan.
this Gohanzan worshipping religion, which is very much into keeping its members.
You're gonna get marked now because of this.
Are you getting put on a hit list
I
now?
probably am.
You're
But
gonna have a cake
the
show up at your door.
the truth is out there. Soka Gakkai International, SGI. Look it up. It's interesting, and there's a lot of different. Of course, some of it's conspiracy theories. I personally looked into some of it, and it does have all the markings of a cult, of isolation.
So, like, what does it say, like, on, like, the wiki and stuff
So
like that?
the wiki,
like Wikipedia?
it depends. The wiki does have a small controversy section, but
Yeah.
other websites say that they have actually taken off the controversy section or altered it permanently, and they just can't. You can't change it and put the stuff that you need to put that
Wow,
actually is controversial of it.
Huh.
And again, it's been around since the 70s. It has 12 million members, and there are plenty of
Yeah, because the thing is, like, when something gets to that size,
Yes.
it gets harder and harder to call something a
Exactly.
cult, no matter what it
Right, exactly.
what it
Because
is,
sheer
you know?
number, not that many. There's no way that many people could be part of a cult or be
Right.
tricked into a cult.
Yes, they could.
They could, depending
We'll
on
get
the
to that when I-
severity.
when I talk about
exactly,
mine.
exactly. So it was weird, and just having that letter. I still have that letter to Sarah, and it is just the strangest thing. The way that I'm not doing it justice. I wish I had it here to read. It was like a call to action for Sarah to do something. Do it. Do it. Either come back or don't. And I just put down a letter.
Yeah.
I said, okay, when you come back to this, and then we took pictures of it and everything, and held on to it, and took pictures of the box, and it was terrifying.
Yeah.
And then looking into it right after, the first thing we found when we typed in Gohanzan was Soka Gakkai International, and it was on the Homeland Security cult watch. Like, hey, if you're deep involved in this, be careful.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah. So
to me, the scariest thing about cults is like the fact that even after you're out, they keep track of where you are, and
Yes.
it's like scary, like how well they do at keeping tabs on where you are at all times.
And that's why I think Sarah was a little bit out of it, but I also think that the race was a way to try and make sure that no one had any listening devices or things. She may have been that afraid of whoever this was.
Ah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Oh, man.
if she was actually being targeted,
Yes.
by
Yes.
Soka Gakkai International.
Soka Gakkai. Yep.
Wow, crazy.
Yeah. So that is why I
That's
picked.
creepy as
That
fuck.
is why.
That's why "and you" is there.
Yes, that is why "and you" is there, and that is also why I thought that was a good one to bring up, even though I didn't know a
That is
whole lot
definitely a
about
good
it
one to bring up.
before.
Yeah.
But,
That's really fascinating.
if you don't hear from me next week, you know what happened. Who's
Right.
next?
Sure. Lee is gesturing towards me, so
Yeah.
I will be happy to
Beautiful.
talk to them. I think now, since it's "and you," I can only
I'm
give you
very excited for
a
this.
brief anecdote, and it's doesn't have nearly as great of a payoff, as your story. But so I have a cousin who a friend of his. This was years back. I must have been like a teenager, at the time. But he said that a friend of his went on a wilderness retreat somewhere, right? I think you already know where this is going.
I do.
Immediately.
I don't.
So he was
endless.
invited.
Of course.
He was invited on a
Special
wilderness
promotion.
retreat, and he went. And at first everything seemed normal, whatever. But it was kind of new agey, and he wasn't necessarily into that. But he was like, "All right, I'll humor them. I'll go along with it. I just want to meditate, maybe go into a sweat lodge or something.
Yep.
Do a little cleanse or something, But then ultimately, what ended up happening is at one point everyone said, "All right, now everyone, let's remove our clothes and let's sit in a circle." I forget what they were going to do, like meditate or like whatever it was, but he was like, what? And so he was really taken aback by this. He's like, this is really weird. Like, why do we have to get nude for this? Excuse me. But then everyone else there just did it without any second, questioning of like anything, right? They just began disrobing, and they were gonna do their little like meditation ritual or something, whatever the fuck it was. So then he felt very uncomfortable. He said, "Okay, I'm leaving. Sorry guys, catch you later." So he did. He left. That's the end of that little story. But then afterwards, he looked up the group that was organizing this wilderness retreat.
Sure.
And would you believe it? They're on the cult watch.
So, question though, was he went by himself?
He did
found
go by
this.
himself.
Okay,
Yes.
so nobody brought him into this. He just found it and
Thought it was
happened
more
to.
innocent.
I'm
than
not
it was.
actually. I'm not totally sure what the context of that was. Whether a friend of his recommended it or whatever. But he went into this situation, as far as I know, by himself, with the understanding that this is going to be like a sort of like new agey, like wilderness retreat.
Sure.
Which is a pretty. It's a pretty common thing. Like plenty of people do them. They go like to do, like I said, like detoxing and cleansing and like meditation and sweat lodge, whatever, that kind of thing.
Naked meditation.
Naked meditation in a
Sacrifices,
circle.
of course.
Human sacrifices.
Absolutely.
All the
Drinking
usual.
some Kool-Aid.
New Age.
Yeah.
The purple Kool-Aid, though, because the red stuff is too classic. It's not New Age,
Yeah, your typical stuff. But so anyway, that's my little anecdote. But the cult that I wanted to speak of today, I wish I knew what that cult was, because I would have liked to do some research on them. But I'm going to talk about my all-time personal favorite, the classic Heaven's Gate.
Yeah, there it is.
Which I adore that story. I mean, obviously it is a great tragedy that,
yes.
All the people who were swindled into, believing in this ideology that took their lives. So I will, say that to preface everything. But I think that also it's a very, very interesting story.
Yes, it is.
And so it starts out 1974, a man by the name of John Applewhite, who will then rename himself T, I believe, right? That was his name, T.
I believe so.
T and Doe was him and his wife,
Yep.
who were the founders of the Heaven's Gate cult. Their belief system, their ideology is, it's a weird blend of Christianity and UFO, like something to do with UFOs. It's like both alien and Christian at the same time.
Jesus was an alien.
Well, it is almost like extreme Mormonism to an extent.
Sort of, yes.
Whereas the aliens
actually, I agree.
are more separate. They don't try to cloak anything in religiousness. It's just like aliens.
Right.
It's like, okay, cool,
Exactly,
great.
like literal UFOs.
Right. You accept the aliens and the
That's
UFOs
actually how
straight
they recruited people a lot of the time, is that they would advertise at various universities and colleges and things like that. They would advertise, hey, are you interested in UFOs? Find out the truth about UFOs. So these are people who are just like marginally interested in UFOs.
Right.
People who might have believed they saw something in the sky, maybe had some kind of
Abductees,
encounter.
yep.
Right, exactly. People who believe they're abductees, all this kind of stuff. So they're ultimately who gets roped into this. And the core thing that I remember of his belief system is that the Earth is going to be spaded under, as he described it, and we as human beings must reach the next stage of human evolution, which is the kingdom of God,
Yes.
the kingdom of heaven.
Yes.
And so this man looks like a cult leader. What I love about Heaven's Gate is that it's the most culty cult
Yes.
in the history of cults.
That is one of those things that you don't even look at it in retrospect. At the time, it's like, what?
Yeah.
Wait, you're going into this.
Yeah,
correct?
He looked like an absolute madman.
Yeah.
You might want to Google John Applewhite, but he had crazy eyes. He had a shaved head. He would record these VHS like tape sermons of his stuff. So it was pretty wild. And so that's the basis of their ideology. So ultimately, what happened is that in 1997. they were reaching the end of the era of Heaven's Gate, and John Applewhite, T at the time, said to all of his followers, who, by the way, they shaved their heads, they were all gave pledges of chastity. Like, this was almost like a monastery.
Yeah.
Like, it was a really hardcore, like, religious devotion that all these people had. And, of course, totally separate from their families. They had to, you know, abandon all of their worldly possessions and things like that to give, to have this kind of, like ascetic, like, monastic, you know, life. And so, let's see, John was then said to them, so, okay, our opportunity now to ascend to the next level above human is coming now in 1997 when the Hale-Bopp comet is going to pass over Earth. Now, what's interesting is it's not the comet itself that delivers the salvation. There's a UFO attached to the comet.
Yes.
And what their plan is that when they would commit suicide, as the Hale-Bopp comet passes, then their souls would ascend to this UFO that is hovering above Earth, and would literally physically take their souls to this, you know, like this other plane of existence where they will, you know, reach the next stage of like human consciousness and etc. On the day that they did this, which they did, by the way, you know, this was a huge, you know, murder-suicide kind of situation. You know, I do blame John Applewhite for their deaths. I think, you know, rightly so.
And I do want to just add real quick, they were in their own compound. So they did have their own
they did.
Secluded little
in San
society.
Diego.
Yes.
Yep.
So it wasn't like they were spread out across, you know,
A
San
mansion,
Diego.
in fact.
Now, did he
mansion.
also kill himself?
Yes, he did.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No,
Yes.
he was absolutely devoted. He was. Yeah. He was not like a Jim Jones who had like his reservations about what he was doing.
Right.
He was ready.
Yeah, no,
he was ready to do it.
They were all on board.
Yeah.
So they on the day that they were going to do it, at their, you know, mansion in San Diego, they went out for their last supper, which was at a Denny's. They all
the
had
places.
Yes, it was at a Denny's.
Did they have moon over my hammy?
I'm not sure. I do know they had the same thing. Everyone ate the same thing. I'm not entirely sure what it was, but they, you know, in true cult fashion, everyone must eat the same thing. So then they donned their jumpers, their Earth Away Team suits, as they called it, with a patch. Like this is like legit, you know, like they were wearing like spacesuits essentially, and I believe Nikes, right?
Yes, brand new unworn Nikes is what they had on their feet.
Yep, Nike sneakers. They, I think it was poison, right? Or was it asphyxiation? Or was it a combination or something like that?
Well, because some people were not into it. Some people did not, and the some of the away team would go and help the transition.
True. Yes.
So I'm sure it was a little of both.
Yeah.
Because you can't force someone to take the poison if they're not going to take the poison. So
Right.
yeah, I do know that some people had to be helped on their transition.
So what happened was they all ultimately, you know, ended their lives. Oh, one other fun fact: they all recorded like last will and testaments.
Yep.
And this exists. You can look it up on YouTube. There is accounts of all of these different members of Heaven's Gate, you know, giving their last little, you know, like, you know, their thoughts before they ascend and all this, you know, kind of stuff. Really crazy to watch because they're all so happy.
Yes.
And they're about to, you know, take their own lives, but they're so convinced that they're going to, you know, ascend to this, you know, like next level of human existence. It's pretty wild. But so then ultimately they all they do either, you know, by asphyxiation or the poison, I forget exactly which, they you know, take their own lives, and these are many people. So what happens is that a few days later, the groundskeeper, now keep in mind this was a mansion, you know, this was a huge compound, this huge complex that they all lived in. He discovered their bodies in what I can only imagine must have been one of the most traumatizing, bizarre experiences of his life. Because on beds everywhere, you saw people laid out in these uniforms, and they were uniforms with purple shrouds over their faces. And everyone was dead, and obviously I can imagine the smell was probably pretty horrible. And, you know, it really is a tragic story. but it's just really wild, you know, and like because it's weird because it always like almost verges on comedy, like half the time. Like for instance, they have, and the website still exists today. There was a Heaven's Gate website that looks like it was made on GeoCities. Yes. Like it looks like total shit.
It is one of those ridiculous things that would be made for like a ham-fisted mystery show, like a CSI episode.
Yes,
is how transparent everything is, and how shoddily made like the website, and the patch is kind of cool. We'll give it. The patch was pretty awesome. So, as awful as that is, they did have some cool style choices, including the Nikes. But yeah, it out of all the cults that we're talking of, they were just the most in your face about it.
Yes.
Across the whole thing. But they were also one of the most devoted.
Yes.
Because you almost have to be incredibly devoted to turn a blind eye to your incredibly insane looking cult leader.
Yeah.
And all of the...
It was a small number of people.
Yeah.
It was a very small number, and it was and John Applewhite preyed on people who were vulnerable. It was almost like in many ways like the Manson family.
Yeah.
A lot of similarities between the two. Only instead of directing their murder outwards, they just, went inwards.
They took their transition.
Fucking nuts.
Yeah.
Lee, speaking of aliens, do you...
Oh, hell, boy, do I have. Hey. Y'all probably heard of this one.
What's
fucking
that?
Scientology.
Scientology? What's that, Lee?
Do you really want me to get in? Yeah. I'll
get into this.
Yeah.
Get into this. Okay, so Scientology was founded in 1954 by L. Ron Hubbard, who was just a fucking sci-fi writer.
Yeah.
And not a very good one at that. And he came up with a concept called Dianetics, which is essentially using it's the science of the soul, essentially, and it's basically self-help, and it's completely considered.
They usually are, like at the core, it's just self-help.
But it's widely considered to be complete pseudoscience, which is really funny to me, and that was the groundwork essentially for Scientology. Which Scientology, the core beliefs of it, are literally just a fucking sci-fi story that L. Ron Hubbard wrote, which he literally has described as a space opera, and it's fucking hysterical. So the
Tell
gist
us of their cosmology.
Okay, so the cosmology. So let's start with there was a galactic federation of planets.
Yes.
And
is this Rick and Morty season 2 or 3?
This is actually season 4.
Oh, season 4. Okay, good.
I have an in with Justin Roiland.
Oh, perfect.
So,
great.
So there's a galactic federation of planets ruled by the galactic overlord Xenu. That's Xenu, and he was a dictator of sorts, and he did not there was overpopulation. So what he decided to do was he drugged several of he drugged billions of his people, billions of his alien people, and he brought them in for drugging under the pretense of income tax inspections.
Wow, so we have some political intrigue going on.
Yes.
This is across planets too.
Yeah.
This
is across planets. Yes.
This is a federation.
Yeah, there's a whole federation of planets. It's a whole like system.
Yeah.
It's a whole star system, and so he brings them in under income tax the pretense of income tax inspection, and proceeds to drug them and suspend them in some sort of solution of like alcohol and glycol or some bullshit like that, and then these drugged people are loaded into spaceships which resemble commercial airliners of today.
Okay.
And they are flown to his extermination site, which is the planet of Earth, which in Galactic Federation terms is called Tigiak.
Okay.
And they are...
So we are the Australia of the Federation.
Sure, yeah.
Okay.
And we are and then the billions of suspended aliens are placed in circles around volcanoes, around all the planet's volcanoes.
Okay.
And then murdered when hydrogen bombs are simultaneously detonated at all the volcanic sites. So all of these aliens are murdered by hydrogen bombs.
It's just so unnecessary.
Yeah.
I don't know why the details.
This is also this is something like 75 million years ago or something. Mm-hmm. And
of course,
there were hydrogen bombs back then.
Yes.
So then,
in the Federation,
of course, the Federation was
they
were way ahead of us. Of course,
they had 747s that fly through space.
You're right. No, they were like D6s or something. And so then all the souls of these aliens arose from their bodies and were collected in giant spheres, and these alien souls are called Thetans. And the Thetans are then brought to large movie theaters and shown what is described as a 3D colossal motion picture that spans for 36 days. And this colossal motion picture implants ideas onto these thetans of other religions, of God, of the devil, of self. And that is what we are. We are thetans that are brainwashed to believe these horrible things that are like other religions and God.
Ideologies.
Yeah, anything. We are all brainwashed, and so all of us have thetans attached to ourselves. Right. We are all basically possessed by alien souls. The alien souls are brainwashed to believe all the things that we see with our own eyes. And
so again,
Scientology,
isolation.
Right. And
Isolation.
Scientology's goal is to awaken those thetans within us and let us see the truth.
So are they like a specter or like a geist or what?
They're just they're us.
We are them.
We are them.
We are just
but
asleep.
Yes, exactly. We are asleep. And the goal,
like physically, or like I thought it was like we were like
they're
like
within
flesh
us.
puppets.
We're flesh
like,
pods for alien souls.
For alien souls.
Yes.
And there's like multiple ones.
Are there multiple ones? I don't know if there's.
I think
there could
so,
be.
yeah.
That I'm not sure of.
Interesting.
But they are the goal of Scientology is to awaken these thetans. Everyone has their operating thetan levels, which you can. There's 1 through 8.
We're at like a 0.
We're at level 0
like
because we're not awake.
So this is like, what does it go to? What is that?
So 8. Level 8 is the highest.
OT8.
So 8 is like you're feeling real Jamba.
Yes, and you can't.
You get powers.
Yes,
right?
you get powers, and normal people can't
And
know.
Like telekinetic powers.
Well, no, not that. I don't know if it's that level. I think it's just like the spiritual awareness.
No, you literally.
Oh,
get
really?
powers.
Okay.
Right.
I remember reading.
You
that.
also
Okay,
get
I was
pneumonia, yes?
I was
Is
unaware of that
that
part.
part
but
of the deal?
The idea of it is you're getting #woke, and you are being you have to move up. The lowest level, which we're level 0, is called clean, and then
I like being clean.
the more you pay the Church of Scientology, the higher you can ascend in thetan levels.
Nice.
And you're paying them thousands and thousands of dollars to ascend, and the higher you ascend, the further in you're dragged,
Yeah.
and the more brainwashed you get, and
The more buyer's remorse you have.
that's
you,
true.
you have to justify your payment. So at that point, you're like, well, yeah, I'm definitely awoken
and
now.
also, and mind you, normal people can't know these things because
Right.
it gets you sick and can kill you. You can get pneumonia from the
Are we
knowledge.
gonna die? We're gonna die.
Yeah,
So if you don't see any of us next week, we all caught pneumonia.
We're all dead from knowing about Scientology stuff. And basically, like the further in you go, you have to like sign like contracts like of secrecy and shit.
Sure.
And the people who there's documentaries of people who they try and exit and like their families are still in, and they're like completely shunned from everybody like around them, and they're like not. They're like threatened, they're never violently attacked, but they're very like they're violently threatened to keep quiet or like to come back or to shut the fuck up about like what they're. It's crazy. There's entire documentaries on Netflix. Yeah, there's a documentary on Netflix about it, and it's absolutely insane the levels they'll go to keep it like all hush because it's a complete fucking scam.
Right.
Is what it is.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it sounds like a money scheme.
It is. It's
just
entirely
a big
a money
old money scheme.
It's like a pyramid scheme,
Right.
like with some,
Basically.
with some like space opera religious.
I was just saying with
undertones.
a doctrine that someone expected to never like take off. With someone who was like, give me a little bit of money, and then all of a sudden it took off. He's like, whoa, wait a minute, my doctrine is not at all.
Honestly, no.
ready to
L. Ron
handle
Hubbard was
this.
like, he was literally just like, yeah, go fucking believe it, sheep. I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
Like, he
Better than
didn't
selling the
believe
book.
his own shit.
Right.
He was like, yeah, this is just a fucking space opera, but yeah, go for
Sure.
it.
I mean, who's
Making money.
Who's not going to take money if someone's going?
He's laughing
I
all the way to
believe
the
it.
bank.
Yeah.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
it's absurd. It's
Crazy.
so fucking nuts. Scientology is ridiculous.
I didn't know some of that stuff because
It's
I
bizarre,
always
man.
it was always just a joke.
It is
I
a
never
joke.
looked
It's-
into
but
it.
It's
I never.
whole- it's,
But no,
it's
like,
a great
It's a
there-
well thought out joke.
There's plenty of people, especially weirdly like in Hollywood and things like that. I mean, like
Tom
they're-
Cruise, John Travolta.
Yeah, like I mean, obviously, if you live in California, you're more susceptible to cults. It seems.
Yeah,
for
yeah.
whatever
Hollywood
reason.
itself is kind of a cult. So.
But yeah, but Hollywood itself, I bet there's all kinds of weird,
Oh, yeah.
fucking like,
Wild.
especially like Stanley Kubrick-esque Eyes Wide
Yes.
Shut. You know, speaking of
Yes.
Tom Cruise, I mean, he was in that movie.
Yeah, he
Maybe
was.
it was a
Ooh.
little autobiographical.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
Interesting. Yeah, no, that is interesting. We are running out of time. I do want to mention real quick. There is a cult that I wish I had mentioned. I didn't. You when you brought up the spiritual everything around you, sort of Organon. Look
Never
up the
heard of it.
cult of Organon.
Is that like the energy thing?
Yes, I told you about it. I believe at
I've
one
never looked
time.
this up.
Or is
Sounds
that
interesting.
Oregon? I thought it was Oregon.
No.
Oregon?
It's
The state of Oregon?
No, Oregon.
Okay.
This one.
Or yeah, but so the actual stuff itself is orgon.
Right.
Orgonomy is the study of it, and it is
Okay.
a cult of like organon or something along those lines. Again, I didn't research it at all,
Right.
but it was.
I know what you're talking about.
It was a psychiatrist.
And I know the organ
Yes.
like machine. Or
Yes,
whatever.
and it was insane. So check that out when you get a chance.
I'm gonna look this up. Real quick before we
please.
go. I just remembered I do have an end use story. It's an anecdote from a friend of a friend, but still.
Do it up.
So friend of a friend was. I don't want
2 minutes.
to. I don't want to use names because it's actually like creepy shit. Friend of a friend was raised in a cult, got out of the cult. To this day, they still, wherever she is, they still somehow find her on her birthday and send her stuff. It's so eerie. Like at her they send
That
stuff
is what
like
they
to
do.
her at her boyfriend's house,
Yeah.
which is insane.
Horrible, isn't it?
That's terrifying.
yeah.
I don't know what cult
happens.
it was.
great.
I have no
happens.
idea, but yeah.
And I'm sure that's why I got a package in between my door and someone else's door because they knew exactly.
That's
where
like
that person lived.
that's so nightmarish.
It's insane. All right, we had a great talk about cults tonight.
Yeah,
For sure.
if
Very
you-
informative.
Yeah,
yeah.
It was informative. That was good. I wish
Yeah.
I had a little more facts. You guys had such interesting facts. I had
To
just
be fair,
a me
Scientology is
story.
the most fucking bizarre shit
That was
ever.
insane. That
It's
was
so
insane.
funny.
Thank you. But yeah, no, your story was.
Yeah,
I hope that my
absolutely,
story
yeah.
made up for my lack of facts.
Well, also you don't want to get like targeted.
True. Yeah, I tried not to because it's not technically a cult.
True.
It just has a lot of cult-like behaviors and traits and red flags
Yeah.
and watch
Too big to
lists
be a
and
cult.
right. It's too big to fail. Anyway, if you liked this and all of our other podcasts thus far, you can let us know at ritterhouseproductions@gmail.com. If you have any suggestions for future podcast topics, also,
If you're a member of a cult, please don't email us.
please don't email us or do.
Yeah, tell us your
well,
story.
tell us-
Let us know
Interesting
your story. That'd be great, actually. To
If
hear.
you got out of a cult,
If you
tell
got
us
out of
your
a
story.
cult,
I actually want to hear that.
If you're currently in a cult, we're not interested in joining, but thank you. And we will see you next week for RitterCast at Ritter House Productions. I am Vin,
I'm Chris.
I'm Lee.
and we are signing the hell off.
Cool.